Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today with Tech Community Live, Windows Edition. This is our first session of the day. We have a full half day available. The next 4 hours, we're going to be talking about all things Windows, from Windows and Store apps and PubSec and accessibility and finally Cloud Labs. So we hope you get to join us for the entire 4 hours. Today, I am going to work with some of my friends and talk to you about Microsoft Store and Windows App Management in today's Microsoft Ask Microsoft Anything. My name is Joe Lurie. I am on a team at Microsoft that we call the Intune Customer Acceleration Team, the Customer Experience Engineering Team. We have a lot of acronyms there. It's CXE, CAT team. And I'm here with Roy, Jason, and Christina, but we have a lot of questions, and you've all really outdone yourselves on pre-posting questions. We have about 30 questions we're going to try to get through. Plus, we're going to ask you to keep posting questions because we'll keep answering them as fast as we can. As I talk to you, Roy, Jason, Christina, as I ask you your first question, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself then, I don't want to waste any more time on introductions. So we have one question, which I'm going to go right to Roy on this one because the very first word in it is winget. So we have a question from Craig. Winget ships with two configured repos, the MS Store and winget. What are the key differences between these repos, as there appears to be some overlap? For example, we see some unofficial apps not maintained by the actual vendor in the MS Store repo, but also official-looking apps in the winget repo. So I'm going to start with Roy, and then Jason, maybe you'll want to comment as well.
For sure. So my name is Roy. I'm a program manager on the Windows Package Manager team. And that is a great question about what is the differences between the two different sources that we have today. So to get started, the store source is actually all the app content that you can find using the store client or the store app. Every submission, every app that's available in there, so long as it matches to an E for everyone rating, we're surfacing it up from that store source. Whereas the winget or winget community repository, that one there is a community-driven repository of applications. And so what you'll see is individuals in the industry or in the community are submitting manifests for applications that they want to use or are using to our GitHub repository. And then from there, they're able to then surface it up through our validation scanning and make it available to everyone in the community.
There's one, Jason, before I ask you to add on that, there's one thing that you did mention, as long as it's rated E for everyone. And I think that's an important note, right? Because we have a lot of our customers are even educational customers that they may not want some of these apps going to first grade, second grade, or year one, year two students. So I think that's a great point that you brought up, is the E for everyone rating.
Yeah, and we are actually trying to have some conversations today about maybe expanding that, where we can bring in some authentication, some account details, and then be able to say that, hey, Joe, you are older than 18, so we'll show you all the apps, right? Or versus
slightly older than 18.
just slightly. Whereas Jason, he looks like he might be 12, and so we're going to surface him at just under the teen rating.
Imagine using AI for something like that.
Right? I don't know how far I get, but yes.
Jason, do you have anything you wanted to talk about with the different repos that Roy was just talking about? That Craig?
Yeah, so I'll prefix with the intro real quick. My name is Jason Sandys. I am also on the CAT team that Joe described before as a product manager. We are effectively part of the Intune engineering group, and we have lots of fun tackling these types of questions and challenges internal all the time, and of course working with Roy on this kinds of stuff. So specifically as those two repositories relate to Intune, I think that's the best place to talk about. Today in Intune, we only have integration with the Microsoft Store repository. Lots of reasons for that. A lot of them come down to risk management. At this time, we just don't feel that there is enough value versus the risk with allowing direct access to the community repository. There's lots of discussions, lots of opinions on that one, but that is the predominant opinion at this point in time. And so that's not in the plans anytime soon. It is only integration with the Microsoft Store that's going to be there.
I'm going to jump in there a little bit there just to make sure I help ease people's minds in that we do a lot of validation on our community repository. So even though it's community driven and community submitted, we are validating security. We're doing deployments. We're validating everything from start to finish, even the files. And then we lock it down to a file hash so that if the file does change from what we validated, we don't go any step further on the client side. So we are making sure that we do our best to make sure that you are safe using these two different repositories.
Thanks for that, Jason and Roy. And Christine, I promise we'll get to you soon. But before we even talk about another question, there's something that I know that Jason, you and I have talked about before, and we're both customer facing. We talk to a lot of customers. We see questions on Twitter. We talk to internal communities as well. We had announced back in July 2021 about the deprecation of the store for business, and recently with the store app new deployment type of app for Windows apps in Intune, this confusion about old store, new store, deprecation, retirement. Can you just bring us up to speed on some of the terms we're going to be using over the next 45 minutes or so?
Yeah, so I'll do this as quickly and briefly as possible. Semantics are always important when we use words that are, similar, have similar definitions. We need to be very careful about which ones we use. So starting off with the deprecation versus retirement. Deprecation doesn't mean that it can't be used and it's not technically supported. Deprecation, things that are deprecated are fully supported. However, we intend to retire them and we want folks to stop using them. For lots of reasons, you may still have to use it, but you should find an alternate path as soon as possible because we will retire it at some point. That's exactly where the store is at today, right? It's still fully supported for use, at least for the things that are still enabled. But we definitely are going to retire it, and we definitely want people to move off of it if they can, which most people should be able to. Whereas retirement is exactly that, right? We're going to either turn off functionality and or turn off support, or both of them, right? Pretty straightforward, and like you said, that's exactly where the store is going here as well. So sorry, and I made the mistake because we do this often internal, and this is kind of the second clarification point here, right? It's not the store itself. The Microsoft Store itself is more or less as it's always been. It's had expanding capabilities, but the store itself is exactly as it's always been. There is no old store. There is no new store. There is an evolved store. What is being retired is the store for business, and it's being replaced by direct integration in Intune. So it sets me off typically when someone says old store, new store. Because that's just not what the reality is here. The store is the store. The apps are the apps. They all live in the store. At least 99% of them do. There is a slight use case out there, but that's not what 99% of the people are talking about. So,
Thanks for that. While I do have you, we have a question from Michael about updating store apps. So his question is if the store is blocked with policy. So we'll assume that it's blocked properly with either CSP or group policy. Will the apps that are installed from the private store or the old store continue to update properly, or will the built-in apps update properly if the store is blocked? So if we're blocking the store using policy, how do we keep our apps secure and up to date?
Yeah, so this one goes back kind of to that definition again. Once it's still all the same store, which means it's all the same apps. So there's two types of apps we have to talk about here because the story is actually slightly different for both of them. We have UWP apps. These are the classic, if we go way back to Metro apps or what Metro apps evolved into. So those are those kind of full-blown, like very native Windows apps. And then we have our Win32 apps. So that's the really old classic apps that most people continue to use. The story is slightly different for both of them. With UWP apps, they definitely come from the store, and the store continues to update them, right? The store itself is responsible for this. And on your Windows device, it's actually a scheduled task. So when we say the store, it's really the store API that's sitting on Windows. And there's a scheduled task that kicks off that API and then automatically updates those UWP store apps just as they've always been updated. With Win32 apps, they're not automatically updated. However, if you're using the new integration in Intune, Intune will automatically upgrade those apps if the vendor has uploaded new binaries or a new version of that app to the store itself. So it's a definite advantage of moving to Windows here if you're going to deploy Win32 apps from the store, using the integration, of course, in Intune.
Great, thanks. Christina, I have a question for you. So again, before you answer it, make sure you just introduce yourself because it's the first time we're hearing from you. So we have a question from Michael. It's another question from Michael. When deploying the company portal app from the new store in Intune, the installation fails for existing devices that already have the company portal app installed. Will the existing installation of the company portal app update properly? Do we need to uninstall the company portal from the existing store and reinstall using the store new deployments?
Yeah. So yeah, quick introduction from my side. My name is Christina, product manager focused on customer experience for Intune, working in the same team as Jason and Joe here. So our job is to work closely with customers and understand their scenarios of management, basically. So coming back to the question, I'm not sure about what exact problem you're having when deploying the company portal from the store, but this is a very common topic that we discuss with our customers, is how to do the migration from the applications that are already deployed from Intune, from the old store, quote unquote, and now the new integration with the store. So the message for the migration is that you basically need to create the application from the store and deploy it to the same users that you had it deployed before. The end user will not see the application to be uninstalled or any change on their side. It's just creating this connection, this link with Intune again, and then the applications will keep on updating and you will be able to manage them from Intune. So on the end user side, they should not see any impact. As for the particular issue you're having with company portal, I think we will have to investigate a bit more on what you are seeing, but that's the general guidance and migration steps.
Yep. Thanks, Christina. That's a good point as well, is if you're having issues, if you have a support contract, if you have support with us, make sure you open a ticket. And that way, even our program, our product groups, if they see like a lot of tickets coming in for a specific issue, they can take care of it before it happens to more people. And so it's a good point to bring up to open a ticket if you're having issues with the company portal app. It should be installing. So we have a question from Russell, which I'm going to give to Jason. And this goes back to one of our message center posts about the dates of the deprecation and retirement of the store for business. So Russell's asking, do we need to manually, or should we manually remove all the connectors, that store for business connector from Configuration Manager and from Intune?
Yeah, good question. I don't remember the dates offhand. There were 3 separate dates for the retirement phases in Intune. One of them has already passed. There is another one in, I think, May and June, and then one in September, but I don't remember what each of them explicitly does. One of them does remove the connection for you automatically, though. And so
that's the one that just passed, I believe.
Okay.
Remove the connector from Intune, yeah.
Okay, so the answer is no, you shouldn't have to. It should have already been done for you on the Intune side there. On the Config Manager side, if you upgrade to 2303, I don't think it will actually let you upgrade to 2303 unless you manually remove that. So as of 2303, it's no longer supported in Config Manager. If you're still running an older version, it will continue to function. The initial plan, as most people know, is the retirement of the store for business was supposed to happen at the end of March. And of course, Config Manager takes a little bit longer, right? We don't have a monthly sprint with Config Manager when we're creating functionality. So we planned all of that retirement before the date got moved or postponed. So there's a little bit of date mismatch going on in the Config Manager world. However, 2303 does effectively draw the line in concrete so that you can no longer have the connector there. But connectors for older versions will continue to work. But going back to the definition of the word deprecation here for store for business, we want you to move off of it, right? It's the whole point here. You need to find alternate paths. You need to implement co-management. You need to get to Intune, right, one way or the other, so that you can continue to do this in a native fashion. You technically can roll your own if you want to call the Winget CLI. Roy and team are happy if you're going to continue to do that for sure. But we built something for you so you don't have to go off and build all your own stuff, and that's all in Intune. So.
Thanks. And thanks for that explanation as well. Roy, speaking of Winget, we have a question that came in from David, and this is really not WinGet specific, but it works into the networking and delivery optimization. So David's asking, we're looking to use WinGet for some application deployment. Is there a way to force WinGet to use DO, delivery optimization, so all devices don't need to reach out to the internet?
So another great question, and I have an excellent answer for you, David. We currently use delivery optimization today for all of our app deployments. However, what you're probably running into is our community repository doesn't have an entry point into DO today. We are working with the delivery optimization team, and hopefully in the near future, we will have a working solution where our community repository will also allow you to deliver those apps using that same DO background.
Is there a genie? I think a genie is coming up somewhere. All right, thanks, Roy. So a question from Travis, going on, more towards the company portal, and so probably I'm going to start with Christina, then maybe we'll go to Jason. So Travis is asking, we're in early stages of planning on implementation of the company portal. I noted after downloading company portal, I'm only seeing our configuration manager software center apps, not the test app I created from the new business store on Azure. Well, we may need clarification on that. Would you be able to demo the steps needed so company portal only shows apps deployed from Intune? We're not actually doing any demos here, but it's Christina. Do you want to talk about those steps or what he needs to do?
Yeah. I think the scenario we are talking about here is in a scenario where we potentially have applications coming from Configuration Manager and deployed from Intune at the same time. Hopefully, if you are in this case, you have enabled co-management, which is the best way to control which workloads are managed by Configuration Manager or Intune. And as you may know, if you transition the application workload to Intune, it doesn't mean you will get only applications from Intune. You will get applications from Intune and Configuration Manager. And also, in Company Portal, you are able to see both. The applications from Configuration Manager and from Intune. So you should be able to see the applications you have deployed from both sides, given that you have configured your co-management properly and you have transitioned the workload. So in this case, you should be able to be seeing those applications in the company portal. I don't know, Jason, if you want to add anything else to that.
The only thing I can think of, there was a switch that we were adding. I don't remember if it actually made it to general availability that turned off config manager apps in company portal. I was trying to remember if we released that or not, but I don't know. We'll have to go look that one up because it was an item in the backlog that we were working on and had evidence for, and there were a handful of customers asking for it, I think for the exact scenario that's being talked about here. But I don't remember if it made it to GA or not. So we'll have to go look that one up.
Okay. And Christina, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit more about something that you mentioned. You kind of breezed through it. So when we look at co-management and we look at the workloads, we have 3 spots for the workloads, right? It could be Configuration Manager, it can be Intune Pilot, or it can be Intune. And we have a lot of different workloads there, 7 or 8 workloads. One of them is client apps. And you had mentioned that if the client apps workload is moved over to Intune, you can still deploy apps with Configuration Manager. And I think that's something that maybe not everybody does know. There's actually compliance settings is another workload that it's very, it's a low-hanging fruit. You can move that one over and not worry about losing any of the Configuration Manager things. So thank you, Christina, for mentioning that. It's a great call out that maybe not everybody knows. Again, the client apps workload, if you move that all the way to Intune or even to Pilot Intune, your Configuration Manager environment can still deploy apps to those endpoints. So thanks for mentioning that. And I do have a question that came in from Daniel about advanced app management. So Christina, I'm going to start with you to talk about advanced app management. And we have an in development page for Intune. So in the under development page, we talk about advanced app management. How will this work versus the store for business? Will it be a replacement, an enhancement, something completely different? And are there plans to support this catalog installs during autopilot provisioning? Are you able to talk to that, Christina?
Yeah, I think to start, we have to see them as different things, right? The store is gonna be there. The store is integrated in Intune. You don't need to purchase any extra license or anything for it. What we are talking with advanced app management is an advanced feature. It's an application catalog that will allow you to deploy and update third-party applications from this catalog. But I think we need to see them as different things. We have the store with the store applications that we know, and then we have the third-party app catalog that will add on top of this functionality. So I don't think we should mix both of them.
Thanks. And I think it's fun, just a fun fact, fun to know is that Danny, who owns that app catalog, he's one of the camera shy people that didn't want to come on camera here, but he's like sitting behind me down those steps. He's sitting behind me to answer the questions as they come in through chat. So keep asking those advanced app management, the Intune suite type questions, because Danny's listening and he's reading and he's answering. So thanks for taking that, Christina. We have some feedback from Eric, and it says, can we please have a plan to where both Microsoft Store and WinGet can be accessed and updated by NT Authority system? I actually saw this question when it came up yesterday, and I thought it was pretty interesting. System account needs to be able to update Store and WinGet apps for all existing local user profiles. This is a desperate need for enterprise. And even under that, there's a +1, right? This is something that they're looking for. So I'm going to start with Roy on just commenting on that feedback, and then maybe Jason.
Oh, for sure. And so like at our AKMS WinGet-CLI, if you go there, you'll see that customers have actually been floating this same feedback up through our issues. And we've got a lot of +1s on this, which is why we actually did a lot of the background work to enable system-based calls for COM. And key call out here is all of our PowerShell modules that we released as part of the Windows Package Manager leverage our COM. So that might be a little tidbit there for you to think about, because our CLI doesn't. And so basically we're trying to build more and more into our product to make sure that we can be more and more supportive of our enterprise customers to enable a lot of that flow to happen so that you can have that happen out there. Now, again, I want to call out that it is a part of our PowerShell modules today. Our CLI is a little bit more restrictive, but we're trying to figure out what we can do there. I don't want to give you too high of hopes or too low of hopes on what we'll do with the CLI, but do know PowerShell does support our COM and COM support system.
Jason, do you have anything you want to add to that as well?
Yeah, I was going to read in a little bit to the scenario here, right? We ask a lot of why questions because we want to peel back the layers and figure out the scenario. So I'll make a leap here and say that this is most likely someone rolling their own solution because they're continuing to use Config Manager or maybe a third-party Windows management tool, or maybe they've rolled their own completely. And right, so the first thing to say is, well, stop and go use Intune, right? That's really what we want you to do. It's not necessarily 100% answer, right? There are scenarios where that's not going to be the path that anyone can actually follow. Hopefully those are few and far between, but we do know of some. So if you are rolling your own, that's, where exactly what Roy was talking about. Don't go down the CLI route, use PowerShell, use other things, use what we in Intune actually use, right? So the IME, which is actually what's calling all of this in WinGet, is not using the WinGet CLI, right? The command line interface that Roy said. It's actually using the COM calls, right? The component object model calls, if you want to expand that acronym out. And so that's exactly what IME does. And so that's why IME can do all of this, or the Intune IME can do all of this. And PowerShell is clearly doing that as well. It's not using the CLI to get it done. So peel back the covers, right?
And expanding out the IME acronym,
the Intune Management Extension, which some people may know is Sidecar. That's typically right. What it's called internally, and it was what it was called during the early developer or early preview days as well. So synonymous.
So fun fact, IME had been used in many of my conversations with the Intune team. It took me at least, I think, 8 months before I realized IME stood for Intune Management.
Yep. That's why I wanted to unacronym that one as well. Thanks. Yep. And Christina, I'm going to ask you this question we've got from Sunil because you sort of talked about it earlier, and I think Jason, you did as well. We have existing apps in the store. Do we have to migrate those apps to the new store, or will they not be updated automatically? Do we have to reinstall existing apps? Please advise. And can we use autopilot with the new store?
Okay, so I think this is more or less what we commented before. So if you have applications from the store already deployed from Intune, what you will have to do is to create those applications again from the new store. Sorry, Jason, and deploy them again to the same group of users. Your end users will not see a reinstall, or they should not see any reinstall of the application or anything. What you are doing by that is just creating again the link between Intune and this application, so it can keep on being updated and you can still manage it. And to the question of can we use autopilot with the new store? Yes, there has been, the functionality has been integrated in autopilot as well. The team did a great job to arrive to get ready for this late April date when the connection with between Intune and the store was removed. So right now it is possible to use them. Yeah.
Thanks, Jason. I see you nodding your head.
No, all good. Yeah, she got it covered.
Great. We have a question from Andreas that came in last night as well. We talk about using Intune, using the store app new deployment type. What solution can we provide users if we don't have Intune for offering the new Windows Store applications?
So that's kind of what Roy and I just talked about a little bit, right? You can definitely go the Winget CLI route. That has the shortcoming exactly like it was talked about, right? And that's why the PowerShell modules are there, or completely rolling your own, like we did with the IME once again. So those would be the paths. Peeling back the scenario, we try to figure out, well, why is Intune not part of the picture? That would be one of the first questions if we engaged with the person that asked that question.
Well, if I wanted to expand on that, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Roy.
I was going to say, I'm going to jump on a little bit more here and say, they could not be using Intune for other reasons.
That's where I was going to go as well.
Config Manager, it could be Landesk, or it could be any other MDM tooling out there. And my answer to that is everything we did with Intune is public. As a customer of these other MDM tooling, lean on your solution provider and say, hey, adopt this new experience using the Winget to offer out store apps, and try and push on them to bring that into their tooling as well.
Yeah, that's where I was going as well. So you put it a better way than I did. So I'm glad that you got to take that. All right, so we have a question from Pano. He's one of our Intune MVPs, a Microsoft Valued Professional. And now I'm going to give you a fun fact. You can't tell from sitting down, but Jason is about like this tall. You can't even see my hand. He's so tall. Panu is as well. So putting them next to each other, like me, I don't even have to slink away. I just walk away, and it looks like I'm going away silently. Anyway, so a question from Panu. While creating a Windows Kiosk profile on Intune, add store apps refers to Microsoft Store for Business apps. Any idea when this will be changed to store app new deployment type instead of Store for Business?
I will take that one. That's kind of a gotcha question. At this time, it's a known shortcoming. It just is what it is. It's a UI issue at this point in time. You can use the CSP behind the scenes to actually address this directly. We know using CSPs directly is not always fun, but that is what can be done today. As far as when it's going to get fixed, that's a good question for Danny, who's asking questions on the chat, because that's functionality that I think he's ultimately going to own. I don't think it's extremely high in the backlog, but depending upon feedback we get from folks, it can be pushed one way or the other.
All right, thanks. And Pano, thanks for asking that. And again, we do have Danny answering questions. We also have Brian back there. Yeah, Brian's back there answering questions as well. And Brian owns a solution. So keep asking those types of questions, and they'll make sure we get to them.
Joe, you got me worried. Are you literally locking them up back? I didn't hear them, but you're saying they're back there.
They're camera shy. They're all the way down the stairs and everything. They didn't want to be seen, even by accident.
You put them in your basement?
Anyway, we won't go there right now. Yeah. Craig has a question that it's interesting as well. So the original concept behind the original store was to try to standardize packages into a new and reliable MSIX derived format. Roy, I'm pretty sure this is going to be directed to you. With the new store, the acceptance of Win32 apps, whilst it will increase the adoption by vendors, does not encourage those vendors to re-release their apps in that MSIX format. What is the roadmap for, what is the roadmap for MSIX to improve the success rate of repackaging?
So, I mean, I don't have all the answers there as not being from the store team. However, what I can say for sure is this is not new. This has been a challenge we've been having for years. Coming from the MSIX team in the past, we always relied on you as a customer to reach out to the software vendors to push on them to release the MSIX packaging. And so now with the store opening up to both Win32 and MSIX apps, the need is still on you. If you need your software providers to provide a MSIX version, lean on them, poke them, ask them for this. We've been shown that we cannot force that to happen on any of our customers. And we need you to do that and have that conversation with them so that we can push that forward. And then as far as the roadmap for MSIX to improve success rate of repackaging, I'm no longer on that team as well. However, I do know that they are doing some new work on some Azure-based solutioning to help with repackaging of applications into the MSIX format. What that information is, I don't have all the details, so I won't try and make it up today. But I do know that they are doing some stuff with Azure to help out with repackaging.
So that goes into Craig's second question, right? Will there be any automated conversion of Win32 apps in the store to MSIX for admins to leverage? And
that's a good question. Actually, I might even bring that up to the team myself because I don't know if they're looking at the store as a viable entryway into converting. So that's a good call. That's a good follow-up. Nice feedback.
I will add, Joe, one quick thing here as well. So this is an interesting question, one that we're attempting to tackle in a slightly different way within Intune. It's not getting to MSIX, but we know one of the challenges here is just repackaging in general or getting apps into a format and a general enterprise catalog. One potential downfall of both the store and sorry, Roy, even the Wingate repositories, right, the community repository, is that it's effectively a push model. We have to wait for the vendors to actually take action to push their apps into those repositories into the store. And so if the vendor's not being responsive, if the vendor's not taking responsibility for their own apps and taking advantage of free advertising, free deployment methods, et cetera, there's not much we can do as Microsoft, right? Customers have a lot more power there. I'm queuing up Danny here and some new functionality that we have coming really, really, really soon. Today it's called Advanced App Management. That's kind of the development name. It may get a new fancy name when it gets released, but it's using a pull model where we are curating a catalog for you, the customer, of Win32 apps, so that it's going to be basically just a handful of clicks in Intune and you're going to have it. You're not going to have to create a Win32 package or an Intune Win32 package. You're not going to go have to curate any metadata for it. It's just going to be there, and we're going to offer updates for those same apps that are in that catalog. That opens a whole huge ball of questions, I'm sure. There is some info out there. Danny did a tech accelerator session a couple of weeks ago about this. And when we release this functionality, I think it's going to go straight to GA. There'll be a ton more info, but that is really where Intune is looking at going with things, is actually providing things proactively, effectively for customers instead of waiting for vendors to do it for you.
Yeah, and that's part of the question that Christina answered earlier with that app catalog. That question came up. That's part of the advanced app management, part of the Microsoft Intune suite. Thanks for mentioning that, Jason. We have a question from Maron, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, that we can start to answer here, but I would ask that you also, the next session right after this one is about PubSec, so it might be a good place to ask that question as well. The question, I'm not sure which one of my experts here can take it, so you can raise your hand and just shout out the answer if you know it. Is Microsoft Store ready to be used for app management in government environments? So GCC, what we call GCC or GCC high environments for governance and other policies that are required in government environments.
Yeah, that's another one we'd almost have to peel back the covers a little bit to get some more specific requirements. My guess is they're talking about when they use a sovereign cloud like GCC High is exactly what Joe was talking about here. And if that's the specific question, is it available for GCC High? Then no, I don't think the store itself has ever been or ever will be part of GCC High. That does leave a gap for those customers that are using GCC High. So today, this is the explicit reason, or one of the scenarios that we postponed the retirement of the store for business is because it offered a capability to download apps offline, which you could then take and move over to your GCC High or sovereign cloud environment. That's why we delayed it. We're working on functionality. Actually, Roy and his team are working on some awesome functionality that will hopefully, assuming that's all on track, and I'm okay talking a little bit about it, Roy, that will replace that. No explicit ETAs on that, but it is coming sometime in the relatively near future so that we can finally retire the store for business, so that you can then use those apps that are exportable or downloadable, that are marked downloadable by the vendor. And now you can take those and use them in the GCC High environment or the sovereign cloud environment or any air-gapped environment for that matter, right? There's a couple of scenarios that are actually in there.
And to actually add on to that too, we're doing this not just for store apps, but also community. And so basically what we're trying to say is anything in the community that does not have is not downloadable. So we default to is downloadable for our community apps. All of that will be available to you for a download there. And then as we start working within the store, we're trying to expose that same functionality that was the Microsoft Store for Business app download and kind of pair that with the Windows Package Manager so that now you in the enterprise space have the ability to download apps. As to the legality or the restrictions for GCC, I don't have any information on that, on whether or not your app licensing and modeling will allow you to transfer those. That would be a great question as a follow-up with GCC team or someone else inside a government cloud to help answer.
Yeah, it's interesting, and something I didn't just learn, but something that really got brought to my attention yesterday with a customer is in the U.S. we call it GCC, GCC High. In Canada they call it like DoD, and all over the world they have different terms for the government clouds that they're using. So when we say GCC here, we're talking about, as Jason said, sovereign clouds and all those like those high security governance type of clouds.
So I like that you pointed that out because I'm Canadian.
I did not know that, but it does answer a lot of my other questions that I had. Okay, so I'm not, Jason, I think you might have commented on this already earlier, but will the store be integrated with the Kiosk profile? The store for business is already integrated, but now it's deprecated and it's going to be retiring soon. First, we needed to add apps into the store for business, and then we could manage the apps in this profile. So how can we use the store app new in a Kiosk profile?
So for using in a Kiosk profile specifically, you can use the CSP today. Now there's a twist there in that question, I think. And Christina, I think you have a customer doing this that has private apps. So that's that 1% I talked about, right? Remember, initially I talked about the 99% use case, clearly a WAG number. But there's a 1% use case where people actually uploaded private apps to the store for business that didn't exist in the public store, right? You have a customer like that, right, Christina?
Yeah. Actually, I'm working with a couple of customers that uploaded private applications to the store in the past. So now they are looking at alternatives. So the path forward right now is to package them in Win32 apps in Intune, for example, and deploy them from there because they are using Intune to manage their devices. I don't think the change has been too big. It's just a matter of the way of deploying them. But again, as Jason said, this is not the most common scenario. The most common scenario is that people take the apps that are already publicly in the store and deploy them.
Now that leaves a potential gap here that I'm not sure we've actually encountered before, and that's where you're trying to use one of those private apps as an app in the Kiosk profile. I'm not sure if you can do that via the CSP or not. That's not something I've ever looked at. So that's a good note that assuming Brian and Danny are listening to this, that maybe someone needs to go off and do some research on, because I don't honestly know offhand if there is a path there.
Yeah, I don't know either. So need to follow up on that.
All right. We can follow up with Brian Brian and Danny. I hope you're listening. If not, we'll follow up with you either way. All right, so we have a question. I'm going to start with Roy on this one from, again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing this, but from Riku. What's the security best practice for Winget? If I want to make my environment for end users a little more strict, should I remove the community repo that we talked about earlier? What happens? What will happen if I remove both community repo, Winget, and MS Store? Will it block using Winget totally if I empty the source list? It's a lot of questions here. What's the best way to block end users from adding any third-party repos for Winget and installing anything with Winget?
So there are a lot of questions all packed into that one open question, right? And so to kind of just dive into a little bit here, looking at the first one, what's the security best practice? Well, honestly, we look to the enterprises to kind of welcome in what apps and content you're willing to distribute to your enterprise. Knowing that our store apps go through a rigorous validation process, our community apps go through a very rigorous validation process from start to finish. All of that is being highly validated and identified for any potential risks. So from our perspectives, even within Microsoft, like we offer out both of those to all of our users today. Should we remove community repository? Again, that goes back to your enterprise needs. Having a repository listed in the Windows Package Manager enables users to go winget install and install from any of your connected repositories or sources. And so if you want to remove a repository, you are very, very well able to. And we do support it from the command line, but we also have a group policy object or ADMX template that you can load into your policy management and deliver out to your user devices. One of which allows you to add or remove sources from that source list through a group policy. Now, the next part of that is what happens if I remove them both? Well, if they're not there, you cannot do any installs from any of those connected sources using the Windows Package Manager. So if you remove the store source, the store client can still install store UWP apps. However, it would impact potential other solutions that are trying to call into the Windows Package Manager to do application installs. The last part of that question is, can we block it? You can. We actually have, so again, if you go to the AKA MS WAC winget-CLI, which should show up down here very shortly. There you go. You can go to our releases section and you'll find release artifacts, and one of which is our ADMX templates. And you'll find a policy inside of there called Enable App Installer Additional Sources. If you disable that policy, the user cannot add new sources to it. If you enable it, you can even add your own and force a repository to be in there. So if you did stand up, say, an enterprise restricted or an enterprise available REST implementation of a winget source, you could then have that as your only source of applications for the Windows Package Manager. So very long answer. Apologize. I hope I hit all the questions in there.
I think you did. I think you did.
I think I did.
And thanks for that. And we can probably remove that banner at the bottom there. So I'm going to ask Christina, I'm going to ask you a question that I saw Daniel asked last night. Our friend Juanita on the Autopilot team is working on blocking apps in ESP, the enrollment status page. Daniel's asking, can someone explain the blocking apps feature in ESP where only selected blocking apps in the technician phase is the simple, in the most simple way? Like, let's pretend our audience are 5 years old. How would you explain blocking app features for our audience?
Yeah, let's try. So actually, it's a very simple setting. What it says is that your autopilot process is going to fail if you have defined if some of the blocking apps fail. However, we are going to try to install all the applications that are deployed to this device, even if they are not blocking apps. So for example, you have an application that is blocked in ESP during the technician phase, it fails, autopilot process will fail. However, if you have an application deployed as required to this device, we are going to try to install it. If it fails, autopilot continues. This has been a feature that has been very useful for a lot of the customers I talk to at least, because they can choose to deploy a lot of applications, and they know we are going to try our best to install them. But if they fail, Autopilot will continue, and probably the next time it tries to install it will be successful. However, they can block maybe 1 or 2 applications to make sure that Autopilot doesn't continue if these 2 applications are not installed. So normally, this is very beneficial because you will get like a higher rate of applications that are installed during the technician phase. But if some of them fail, it's not a big deal. Autopilot continues, and we will try to install them again later. So that's the scenario. So when we talk about technician phase, is because we are talking about Autopilot pre-provisioning, right?
That was my follow-up question to you. Let's talk about that technician phase and what that actually means.
Yeah, so just to expand a bit more on that, the technician phase is the first part of the Autopilot deployment when we are doing pre-provisioning Autopilot. This is intended to be the phase that the technician sees, where we want to try and install the maximum number of applications, so the user then has to wait less time in the user phase, which is the second phase of the pre-provisioning enrollment, the Autopilot.
Thanks for expanding on that as well. So I didn't even have to ask you to. All right, we have about 5 minutes left. We have a couple of questions left. I'm going to try to get to them if I can. We have a question from Guillaume. Will it be possible to force application updates in the event of a critical vulnerability on workstations with non-admin users? Jason.
Yeah, so that one goes back a little bit what I was saying before, but I think there's a key piece here, and this is, I guess, something that folks haven't fully internalized around UWP apps. So normally we're talking UWP apps here when we're talking store apps, because that's what, like, again, 99%, another WAG number for me, but a vast majority of them are. UWP apps are installed per user. You don't need to be a local admin to actually update them, right? That's why the store can update your UWP app for you. So to force that, you could run that scheduled task. I don't know what it is offhand. Roy and I have gone and found that before. Actually, Roy went and found it for me because I didn't know what it was. So it is technically possible you can do that, but nothing has changed there. Once again, that's the way the store has been since Windows 8 was released. Right. Everyone's just kind of waited in a queue. The store has this wonderful algorithm that it uses as far as queuing folks up. And once a publisher, so going back to like kind of that push-pull thing here, once a publisher updates their app, because that's always the first piece of this, then your store app on your local device, or really that scheduled task, goes and tries to do the update in some random, it's not really random, right? There is an algorithm there, but seemingly random to most users fashion. And it'll just happen. Win32 apps, on the other hand, that one will be controlled by the IME. Like I said, there is no automatic process to update Win32 apps that are in the store, but the IME will initiate those through Winget. So you kind of have 2 potential possibilities there. Now, these are Win32 apps, so they aren't necessarily per user installs. They're most likely not per user installs, since most Win32 apps aren't. You could go initiate this via the Winget CLI or the PowerShell command line. You would have to do that through Intune or Config Manager, right? Because you'd want to be elevated at that point if the user's not an admin. Or you can restart the IME. The IME is controlling this. The IME is doing this on its normal maintenance schedule, which I think is every day. So like most other operations in the IME, you should be able to restart the IME and that'll kick it off. Once again, a non-admin user won't be able to do that, though. It is a service. So you're going to have to find a way of delivering that. So you can use a script to do that. So you can use Config Manager scripts. You can use Config Manager baselines. You can use proactive remediations in Intune. You can use scripts in Intune. Yeah, there's probably some other ways, lots of other ways in there, but you just have to figure out how to restart that using some type of remote command or elevated command at that point in time. But the users won't be able to explicitly initiate that.
Thanks, Jason. We have about 80 seconds left, so I'm not going to ask any more questions. I want to thank my panel here. I want to thank my panel downstairs for continuing to answer questions. And we will continue to answer these questions even after this 80 seconds, 60 seconds is up. So thank you. Any final words? I'm going to go Roy, Jason, Christina. Roy?
My final words are thank you. I appreciate all the questions coming in. It really helps us tell a story to our internal teams and really allows us to push out new features. Your interests, your desires really help us move forward.
Yeah, thanks, Jason.
Wow, that was awesome, Roy. Super inspiring. He really was. I was going to say something technical, but I should end on something even better, right? So, we're passionate about making things work for customers. Joe, Christina, and I are on the CAT team, the customer acceleration team. We're here to help customers. So we love having these interactions. We can't magically make everything happen all the time, but we're trying as hard as we can, right? So maybe we'll get IBM's pixie dust one day and we'll be able to do that.
Thanks, Jason. And Christina, 10 seconds.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Same as Jason, all your questions are feedback for us, so very welcome. And thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you at the PubSec section next.
Thanks all.
Bye.